Okay, so today we are going deep on something pretty fascinating.
Uh-huh.
The dark web.
Sounds good.
We're going to try to figure out what it is,
Okay.
how it came about,
Mm-hmm.
and why you should even care.
Right.
We've got some pretty interesting research to dig into.
Okay.
So let's just jump right in.
Yeah. When most people think about the dark web,
Yeah.
they probably picture like shadowy figures
Right.
in hoodies,
Yeah.
hacking into government systems.
Right, exactly.
But the truth is the dark web has a long and complex history,
Oh, really?
like a really long one.
Okay.
It goes all the way back to the 1960s.
The 1960s, that's way before
I know, right?
the internet as we know it.
Yeah.
So what was going on back then that relates to the dark web?
Well, think about it. Even back then, governments and militaries needed secure communication channels.
Right. Makes sense.
That's where ARPANET comes in.
ARPANET.
It was like the precursor to the internet,
Okay.
developed by the U.S. military.
Right.
And guess what? The very first illegal online transaction
No way.
happened on ARPANET,
What was it?
a drug deal
A drug deal.
between students at Stanford and MIT.
Wow. So even in the early days, people were already figuring out how to
I know.
use it for not-so-legal activities.
Exactly. And that desire for anonymity and privacy, that
Yeah.
continued to drive the development of technology.
Okay.
That would eventually lead to the dark web as we know it.
So how did we go from these early experiments on ARPANET
Mm-hmm.
to the full-fledged dark web as we know it?
Well, in the 80s, we saw the emergence of
Yeah.
data havens.
Data havens. What are those?
These are countries with lax laws where people could store data out of reach of governments or law enforcement agencies.
It's basically hiding stuff.
Exactly. It's the same concept behind the dark web today.
Okay.
Using technology to shield information and activity from prying eyes.
Okay, so it's all about keeping things hidden
Mm-hmm.
under the radar.
Yeah.
So what happened next?
Well, in the 90s, something big happened that really changed the game.
Yeah.
Napster.
Napster. I remember Napster.
You remember?
Yeah.
It was this peer-to-peer file sharing service that allowed people to share music online,
Right.
often without permission from copyright holders.
Right.
It might seem unrelated, but Napster proved that online marketplaces could be incredibly powerful.
Everyone was downloading music
Yo.
like crazy.
Right.
It really showed the potential for large-scale online activity.
Exactly. Napster demonstrated the viability of online marketplaces and the desire for anonymity and free access to information.
Okay.
It laid the groundwork for what would later become a key feature of the dark web.
Okay, so we've got secret government networks.
Yeah.
Data havens.
Right.
And the rise of online marketplaces.
Uh-huh.
How does this all lead to the dark web as we know it today?
The missing piece of the puzzle was the technology to make it all truly anonymous and secure.
Okay.
Enter Tor,
Tor?
the onion router,
Okay.
which was released in 2002.
Okay.
It was originally developed to protect the privacy and communication of individuals, especially in countries with censorship.
So Tor was designed to help people
Yeah.
stay safe,
Uh-huh.
avoid censorship, but it ended up becoming the gateway to the dark web.
Yeah. How about that?
How did that happen?
Well, Tor works by routing your internet traffic through multiple layers of encryption,
Okay.
like the layers of an onion,
Well-
making it very difficult to track.
So it's hidden.
Yeah, this made it the perfect tool for anyone who wanted to operate online without being traced, whether they were activists, journalists, or unfortunately criminals.
So Tor provided the anonymity,
Yeah.
but something else was needed
Mm-hmm.
to really make the dark web take off.
Yeah. In 2009, Bitcoin entered the scene.
Bitcoin.
Suddenly, it was possible to make online transactions without revealing your identity.
Okay.
And this opened up a whole new world of possibilities on the dark web.
Ah, so Bitcoin provided the currency
Yeah.
for this anonymous online world.
Mm.
It's like the digital equivalent of cash
Yeah.
changing hands in a dark alley.
That's a good analogy.
No one knows who's involved.
And with that, the stage was set for the dark web to evolve into what it is today.
Okay.
A complex mix of good and bad, hidden behind layers of encryption and anonymity.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's unpack that a little bit more
Okay.
as we move on.
Sounds good. With the arrival of Bitcoin, the dark web really started to flourish. And one of the most notorious examples of its potential was the Silk Road.
The Silk Road.
Yeah.
That name rings a bell.
It was an online marketplace that launched in 2011.
Yeah.
And quickly became a hub for buying and selling illegal drugs.
Oh, wow.
It really brought the dark web into the public consciousness and showed the world just how powerful this hidden corner of the internet could be.
So the Silk Road was like the Amazon of illegal goods.
You could say that.
That's pretty unsettling, to be honest.
It was a major wake-up call for law enforcement.
Yeah.
The FBI eventually shut down the Silk Road in 2013, but it was just a sign of things to come. New marketplaces and platforms constantly emerge, making it a constant challenge to keep up with the ever-evolving landscape of the dark web.
It sounds like a never-ending game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
You shut down one site and 2 more pop up in its place.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that the dark web isn't just about illegal activity.
Right.
It's also used by people who need to protect their privacy and freedom of speech, especially in countries where those things are restricted.
We talked about that earlier.
Right. Journalists, activists, whistleblowers, they all use the dark web to communicate securely and avoid censorship. It's like a digital shield, protecting them from those who would silence them.
Right.
It can be a lifeline for people living under oppressive regimes, allowing them to access uncensored news and connect with the outside world. So while it's important to be aware of the dangers, we shouldn't view the dark web as entirely bad or evil.
Right.
It's a tool that can be used for both good and ill.
So how do we reconcile these two sides of the dark web, the potential for good and the potential for harm? It seems like a complicated balance.
It is, and that's why it's so important to understand how the dark web actually works. One thing people often misunderstand is how it's structured. It's not just this random collection of websites floating around in cyberspace.
Yeah.
It has its own internal logic and organization.
So there's some kind of order to this digital chaos?
You could say that, remember those .onion domains we mentioned earlier? Those websites are often hosted on hidden servers that are only accessible through the Tor network.
Yeah.
These servers are constantly shifting and changing locations,
Okay.
making it very difficult to track them down.
So it's like a constantly moving maze designed to keep people out.
Exactly. And this decentralized structure is one of the things that makes the dark web so resilient. Even if law enforcement manages to shut down one server, others quickly pop up to take its place. It's like trying to weed a garden where the weeds keep growing back faster than you can pull them.
So even with all the efforts to combat illegal activity, the dark web continues to adapt and evolve. It's a bit like a digital arms race. Isn't it law enforcement trying to catch up with the criminals who are always one step ahead?
That's a good way to put it, but let's shift gears for a moment and talk about some of the specific dangers lurking on the dark web. One of the most common threats is the buying and selling of stolen data.
Data breaches seem to be in the news all the time. It's scary to think that our personal information could be out there for sale on the dark web.
It's a huge problem. Think about all those data breaches we've heard about in recent years. Companies, banks, even government agencies. The information stolen in those breaches, credit card numbers, social security numbers, passwords, often ends up for sale on the dark web.
So it's like a digital black market for stolen identities.
That's a good analogy, and the prices for this information can be surprisingly low. In some cases, you can buy someone's entire identity for just a few dollars.
That's frightening. It makes you realize how vulnerable our personal information is in the digital age.
It's a stark reminder that we need to be vigilant about protecting our data. But stolen data is just one piece of the puzzle. The dark web also serves as a marketplace for other illegal goods and services.
Like what?
We're talking about things like illegal drugs, weapons, counterfeit currency, and even hacking tools and malware. It's essentially a one-stop shop for anyone looking to engage in criminal activity.
It's disturbing to think about the kinds of things that are being bought and sold on the dark web, and there are even more sinister elements, right?
Unfortunately, yes, we have to acknowledge the presence of truly horrific content, such as child pornography. It's a reminder that the anonymity and privacy offered by the dark web can be exploited for terrible purposes.
It's a sobering reminder of the dark side of technology.
Law enforcement agencies around the world are working tirelessly to combat these activities, but it's a constant uphill battle. The decentralized nature of the dark web makes it incredibly difficult to track down criminals and shut down these illegal operations.
So it's clear that the dark web poses real dangers. But we can't forget about its potential for good as well. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Absolutely, and that complexity is what makes it so fascinating and, frankly, a bit unsettling. It's a reminder that technology is a double-edged sword. It can be used for great things, but it can also be used for harm.
So what can we as individuals do to protect ourselves from the risks associated with the dark web?
The first step is awareness, understanding what the dark web is, how it works, and the types of risks it poses is crucial. Then you can start taking steps to mitigate those risks.
Like what?
One of the most important things is to practice good password hygiene. That means using strong, unique passwords for all your online accounts. And I'm talking about every account. Don't reuse passwords.
So if one account gets compromised, it doesn't give hackers access to all your other accounts.
Exactly. And whenever possible, enable two-factor authentication.
Two-factor authentication,
Yeah.
that's where you need a code from your phone or email in addition to your password, right?
That's right. It adds an extra layer of security and makes it much harder for someone to break into your accounts. It's a simple step that can make a big difference.
What else can we do?
Be extremely vigilant about phishing scams.
Phishing scams, those are emails or messages that look like they're from a legitimate company, but are actually designed to steal your information, right?
Exactly. Always be suspicious of unsolicited emails or messages that ask you to click on a link or provide personal information. If you're unsure about the legitimacy of an email, contact the company directly to verify.
That's good advice. It's easy to fall for those scams if you're not careful.
And of course, we can't forget about software updates.
Ugh, those annoying updates that always seem to pop up at the worst times. But they're important, right?
They are keeping your operating system, web browser, and other software up to date is crucial for patching security vulnerabilities that hackers can exploit. Those updates often contain vital security fixes that protect you from attacks.
So it's best not to ignore those update reminders, even if they're inconvenient.
Exactly. It's also a good idea to use a reputable antivirus program and keep it updated.
Antivirus programs, those can help detect and remove malware that could steal your information or give hackers control of your computer.
Precisely. And finally, consider using a virtual private network, or VPN.
A VPN, what's that?
A VPN encrypts your internet traffic, making it more difficult for hackers to intercept your data.
So it's like a tunnel that protects your data as it travels across the internet.
That's a good way to think about it. VPNs are especially important when you're using public Wi-Fi, which is often unsecured and vulnerable to attacks.
That's really good to know. I use public Wi-Fi all the time.
It's convenient, but it's also risky. A VPN can add an extra layer of protection.
So there are concrete steps we can take to protect ourselves, even in this wild west of the internet.
Absolutely. And those steps start with awareness, good digital hygiene, and a healthy dose of skepticism.
It sounds like we all need to be a bit more savvy about how we navigate the digital world, especially with the dark web lurking in the shadows.
That's right. But let's not forget that the dark web is more than just a place of danger. It's also a place of innovation and experimentation. It's where new technologies and ideas are constantly being tested and developed.
So there's a positive side to this as well.
Absolutely. For example, some people believe that blockchain technology, the underlying technology behind Bitcoin, has the potential to revolutionize everything from voting systems to supply chain management, and others are exploring the use of the dark web for creating secure communication channels that can help protect journalists, activists, and whistleblowers.
So while we need to be aware of the risks, we shouldn't dismiss the potential for good that exists within the dark web.
Exactly. The dark web is a complex and multifaceted realm, and it's up to us to shape its future.
It's like a digital frontier full of both promise and peril.
That's a great way to put it. And as we venture into this uncharted territory, we need to be mindful of both the opportunities and the dangers that lie ahead.
Well, we've spent this deep dive exploring this kind of shadowy world of the dark web, kind of traced its roots back to the early days of the internet, uncovered some of its hidden workings,
Right.
and confronted its potential for both good and evil. As we wrap up our exploration, though,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with a question, something to kind of ponder
Okay.
as you continue on your journey through the digital world.
Okay.
So we've talked about how the dark web is a reflection of society,
Yeah, a mirror to our values,
the conflicts.
our aspirations.
We've also seen how technology is constantly evolving.
Yeah, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
So here's the question.
Okay.
As technology advances at this crazy pace, do you think we'll ever be able to really truly control the dark web?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Or will it always stay one step ahead,
Right.
evolving into something even more hidden,
Right.
more complex, and more resistant to our attempts at regulation and control?
It's a question without easy answers.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a question worth asking, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the future of the dark web is intertwined with the future of the internet itself.
It is.
And ultimately,
Yeah.
it's up to us
It is.
to decide what kind of future we want to create.
Very true.
Well, thanks for joining us
Yeah, thanks for having me.
on this deep dive into the dark web.
Appreciate it.
Until next time,
See ya.
stay curious
Just informed.
and stay safe.